Howard Lima of We Are Change Connecticut, wearechangect.org, and this is Truth Talk News. CBS News reported last month that Syrian rebel victories had become increasingly rare, and that the Muslim Brotherhood-backed opposition fighters were sustaining some of their heaviest losses near Damascus. The New York Times reported concerns that Assad would use chemical weapons to crush the rebellion. He did not. In fact, a May 6, 2013 Washington Post article written by Sean Waterman revealed that even before Assad's forces gained the momentum, a UN official found evidence of rebels using chemical weapons, but no evidence that Assad's regime did. Recently, a senior UN diplomat stated that testimony from victims strongly suggests it was the rebels, not the Syrian government, that used sarin nerve gas in the recent attack. Carla Del Ponte, a member of the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Syria, told Swiss TV there were strong, concrete suspicions that rebels seeking to oust Syrian strongman Bashar Al-Assad had used the nerve agent. A 100-page report on the investigation turned over to the United Nations by Russia concludes that the Syrian rebels, not the Syrian government, used the nerve agent sarin in the attack in the Syrian city of Aleppo last March. While contents of the report have yet to be released, sources indicate that the deadly sarin gas was manufactured in a Sunni-controlled region of Iraq and then transported to Turkey for use by the Syrian opposition, whose ranks have swelled with members of al-Qaeda. Obama, at a recent news conference in Stockholm, Sweden, dismissed the alleged chemical weapons capability of the Syrian opposition, even though the UN now has documentation to substantiate the claim. For some reason, the United Nations has stalled and is yet to begin investigating its own findings. This is not surprising, since Anglo-American interests want regime change in Syria. Outrageously, Obama shined a deceptive light on the genocide in West Africa, using it as a ploy, an example of how the world looks to America for leadership in global crises and issues like starvation, by using Syria as a catalyst to start this process of change. To do something. Since we've done nothing to save millions of people from starvation in the Sahel region of West Africa, where at least 3 million children are dying of starvation, let's bomb Syria to make up for it and create even more conflict in the process and more hatred toward America. Why has West Africa been ignored except for Obama's speech using their suffering as justification to strike Syria? Why the lack of help from America? Well, for one, there is no oil, commerce, or resources for the American megabanks and corporations to monopolize and pillage in countries like Niger, Sudan, Somalia, and Darfur. Another reason is National Security Memorandum 200, written by Henry Kissinger in 1974, speaking of the need to depopulate Africa and the Third World. The report advocates the promotion of education and contraception and other population control measures, further stating that no country has reduced its population growth without resorting to abortion. Under the Memorandum 200 microscope, Third World countries must submit to mandated vaccinations, contraception, and sterilization programs to receive any food aid or humanitarian assistance. Obama and Secretary of State John Kerry claim the U.S. has intercepts which establish that the Syrians ordered the August 21st chemical attack on opposition forces. But intelligence sources say the information lacks any smoking gun evidence pointing to a direct order from Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. In addition, the intelligence originated with the Israelis, who have a vested interest in seeing Assad removed as soon as possible and his known chemical weapons storage facilities destroyed. Now, with all the red line rhetoric, Obama flip-flopping, congressional approval, and a speech to the American people on Tuesday, Assad has undoubtedly moved any chemical weapons to alternative locations, meaning any strike on Syria wouldn't destroy weapons of mass destruction, but punish Assad and in the process kill innocent civilians who are always the true victims of war, not the elite oligarchs beating the war drums. The question remains whether the U.S. has independent, verifiable, accurate intelligence of what the Israelis apparently provided. Memories remain fresh of then Secretary of State Colin Powell in February 2003 making the case for war against Iraq.
Colin Powell didn't lie. My colleagues, Every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
Based on that intelligence, the U.S. initiated military action, only to discover following a countrywide search that there were no stockpiles of chemical weapons. The likelihood that the Syrian chemical attack was coordinated by Western intelligence, CIA, MI6, Mossad, grows every day. The elite seek to plunder Syria as they did in Libya and Egypt, and install a puppet regime sympathetic to their domination, using intelligence agencies like the CIA as their muscle. After all, it would not be the first or last time the CIA used false flag terrorism to effect regime change. In a book published in January 2013, La Repubblica della Stragi Impuniti, Italian judge Ferdinando Imposimato wrote that NATO carried out the terrorist attacks that hit Italy over several decades, beginning around 1969. The book refers to a 1967 document showing the involvement in terrorism of the Bilderberg Group. Bilderberg works for NATO, which works for the Pentagon. Judge Imposimato presided over several terrorist cases, including the assassination of President Aldo Moro and the attempted assassination of Pope John Paul II. On August 2, 1980, under Operation Gladio, the CIA blew up the Bologna, Italy train station, killing 85 people and wounding more than 200. According to the Italian Senate, after its investigation in 2000, the bombers were men linked to structures of United States intelligence. The bombing was carried out by the same group who did 9/11. The Bologna bombing was part of Operation Gladio's strategy of tension, creating fear to keep populations enthralled to strong leaders who will protect the nation from the ever-present terrorist threat. Sound familiar? The honorary president of the Italian Supreme Court, Judge Imposimato, states that Bilderberg is behind all the terrorism. Behind the strategy of tension and the terrorist slaughter, there is the Bilderberg Group, a sort of big brother, manipulating events, using terrorists, foreigners, and Masons. CIA Chief Alan Dulles devised Operation Gladio to set up terrorist forces across Europe. Imposimato says that he was given the 1967 document by a former Ordine Nuovo terrorist. The CIA-linked Ordine Nuovo, New Order, carried out the 1969 Piazza Fontana bombing and a host of other terrorist attacks. So false flag terror attacks are nothing new.
This is what they're selling to the Western world, folks. And now think to yourself, how many dead bodies have you seen? How many images of horror and torture? Yeah, think back. And think back how many of those were fake.
A couple of explosions, what may have been an outgoing Patriot ground-to-air missile, some reported airbursts that may have been an intercept of an incoming Scud missile. We're really not sure. All we know is that the air raid sirens have gone off, and we've heard the outgoing roar of at least one Patriot missile. We've heard some sort of airburst. We can't tell where it was from where we are right now. We're waiting to see what's happening. As you can hear, the air raid sirens are still going off around us. People are, strangely enough, used to it. This is the first one of these attacks that's taken place early in the morning, but they're not showing you anything other than what we got now. What did you see there? Is that a missile going out? No. We're not quite sure. We can't show you anything else than what we're seeing right now. Because of military regulations, we are not allowed to show you where the missiles might be going, what direction they might be flying in, where the airbursts might be taking place. There's obviously something going on. We heard another dull roar that shook things a little bit, and we're waiting to see what else is going on. Right now, that's about all we know, that something is happening. We're hearing pops and things shaking. But people are staying relatively calm around here. People evacuated in an orderly way to the shelters, but apparently there is something going on. The Patriot missiles, we're assuming they're Patriots, have gone outbound, and we've heard some explosions, and that's about it for right now. We'll get back to you when we know something else. Something is happening here, and we're watching, we're scanning the skies for something else coming in, but right now we can't see much of anything, and frankly, this is what we can show you on television right now because of military restrictions from both the Saudis and the U.S.
CD, if you need to take cover, I notice that you've got your gas mask in your hands. If you need to put it on, please do so. If you need to take cover, please do so. If you are able to take a question, did you think that the possible threat would be over because it is now morning there? It's what, just after 6 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, the whole thing is everyone assumed that the threat would be over because it was early morning, but the thing about Saddam Hussein is that he has never...
So where's the background noise? All the background sound effects are gone. It's impossible if it was live, isn't that true?
An air raid, an apparent attack, although we can't say what the outgoing...
Everything just quieted down completely.
20 after 7 in the morning Saudi Arabian time.
Wake up, sheep.
All the other attacks have occurred from 10 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning. This is the first one to take place in eastern Saudi Arabia during the daylight hours. Now, that sound you hear behind me is the...
Here comes the next big
hotel.
Phony.
Not the national... By afternoon. So, people are looking up in the skies, scanning the skies to see what they can see. Do we see much of anything out there? Can we see much of anything? Okay, well, apparently there was some word of outgoing. Again, we cannot be specific about the direction. All right, we are now led to understand that there are also firings in another city in Saudi Arabia. CNN's Carl Rochelle is here with me, just came up. Carl, I know we can't be very specific given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see?
Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked almost straight above us. There is a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. A white
sound effects again. Here we go. Look at this. Propagandized fear-mongering.
After careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets. This would not be an open-ended intervention. We would not put boots on the ground. Instead, our action would be designed to be limited in duration and scope. But I'm confident we can hold the Assad regime accountable for their use of chemical weapons, deter this kind of behavior, and degrade their capacity to carry it out. Having made my decision as Commander-in-Chief based on what I am convinced is our national security interests, I'm also mindful that I'm the president of the world's oldest constitutional democracy. I've long believed that our power is rooted not just in our military might, but in our example as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's why I've made a second decision. I will seek authorization for the use of force from the American people's representatives in Congress.
There are no boots on the ground when it's already been reported that we have a Jordanian-American coalition of special forces who are already in Syria, and their objective is to topple Assad. So where are we here? We're not going to do any boots on the ground, no regime change, and they will do their best to get their puppet put in place. They've done it successfully in Libya, successfully in Egypt, and now again the people are in an uproar because the obvious truth is that these elites are more interested in plundering and stealing the resources and putting the people into poverty. Don't be sheeple, people. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Go to wearechangect.org. I'm Howard Nima. Thank you for watching Truth Talk News, where news the mainstream media ignores is the top story. For more truth, subscribe to Freedom First Films on YouTube and Truth Talk News on livestream.com. Suspicions that rebels seeking to oust Syrian strongman Bashar Al-Assad had used the nerve agent. A 100-page report on the investigation turned over to the United Nations by Russia concludes that the Syrian rebels, not In fact, a May 6, 2013 Washington Post article written by Sean Waterman revealed that even before Assad's forces gained the momentum, a UN official found evidence of rebels using chemical weapons, but no evidence that Assad's regime did. Recently, a senior UN diplomat stated that testimony from victims strongly suggests it was the rebels, not the Syrian government, that used sarin nerve gas in the recent attack. Carla Del Ponte, a member of the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Syria, told Swiss TV there were strong, concrete I'm Howard Nima of We Are Change Connecticut, wearechangect.org, and this is Truth Talk News. CBS News reported last month that Syrian rebel victories had become increasingly rare, and that the Muslim Brotherhood-backed opposition fighters were sustaining some of their heaviest losses near Damascus. The New York Times reported concerns that Assad would use chemical weapons to crush the rebellion,